Okay, so this is actually a video. Hey! Um, and this video is on the topic of short stories. So, as a kid, or as a younger person reading, I got into Ray Bradbury, and I also particularly liked the short stories of Stephen King. I'd still say I particularly like his shorter fiction and his novellas for that matter. He has some great novella collections. Don't buy them. Here's a warning for everyone. Don't buy them as standalone books. Don't buy The Body as a standalone book. Buy Different Seasons. It has The Body and Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, and I think Apt Pupil and The Breathing Method as well. And so you've got the Stand By Me novella and the Shawshank Redemption novella, as well as a couple of other novellas. And you could buy that, or you could buy The Body as its own thing and get like an excerpt from Fairy Tale as by Stephen King, a lesser Stephen King book, or at least a newer one. I don't imagine it's one of his better ones, but his he has some great novellas. He has some excellent short story collections. I think his first four were just generally and genuinely good. Everything's Eventual, the fourth one, actually might be my favorite of the four. Just like a personal favorite. I don't know if I'd say it's the best, but I just bought. I had them all. And I have Bazaar of Bad Dreams on Kindle. So I've owned every Stephen King short story collection, but the most recent two I was disappointed with. But the first four, including Night Shift might be the best. But then Skeleton Crew and Nightmares and Dreamscapes, they have some good stuff on them. So what I would say is, what I was going to say is, I started off by being more interested in short stories, and then I think I sort of followed a progression of reading enough short stories where I was just naturally reading books, like novels or just whole books. And I've, as with perhaps many people in the last, 10 years or so, my reading, it feel reading output seems like more of a classical way to say it, like the work I've been putting into reading and the amount of books I've gotten done, but really it's reading input. My reading input has been, and that's not synonymous with consume, although I guess it could be synonymous how some people use it. But the reading input has been a lot lower. But I think perhaps one way to work myself back up to a higher reading input, and I think I've found that this has worked when I've done it, but I just haven't been tracking it, is reading short stories. And so I just, I have this now, and I think Skeleton Crew. I don't think I actually have copies of his other collections other than my continuing ebook copy of The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. But I mean, I think I just bought this at the supermarket. I mean, just reading the story Jerusalem's Lot, which is sort of similar to Salem's Lot. I haven't read it in a while. I don't know if I ever finished it. If I did, but back when I read at least some of it, nor did I finish Salem's Lot actually. But it's I think it's sort of a companion piece to Salem's Lot ultimately. Although Salem's Lot ended up being maybe written and I think indeed published after this. Maybe not actually. Um, I don't know if it was Jerusalem's Lot was published in a magazine, but 1976. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't have. If you put a whole list of Stephen King's books, it'll probably be a long list. Oh, here we go. Novels. Oh, it's separated short story collections and novellas. So yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, the second book he released was Salem's Lot. Salem's Lot probably was released before Night Shift was. I'm not sure, but that doesn't mean that the story Jerusalem's Lot was released. Here we go. Jerusalem's Lot, was that released in a magazine? That might have been a story that he just put in here that wasn't released in a magazine, almost maybe as a curio at that point to say, hey, look at what I was thinking of, and then Salem's Lot came around. But short stories, whether they be Stephen King or Ray Bradbury, he has some great short stories, many of them to be found in the Stories of Ray Bradbury and Bradbury Stories. If you're going to look into Ray Bradbury, you could do worse, I would say, than just buying those two collections, and like that's all you have to do. Or if you go on to buy his other collections, or even like the Martian Chronicles, where it's presented as sort of a novel, or it's presented as something other than just a short story collection, or like the Illustrated Man in that way, you'll probably end up getting like doubles. But if you get really into Ray Bradbury, you might end up wanting to collect his whole literary output. I have Dark Carnival. I think it's like the Gauntlet. No, the Cemetery Dance re-release of it. I spent probably like $60 or $80 on that or more, but I don't think I have it anymore. But anyway, if you were to just stop at the Stories of Ray Bradbury, which is probably the one you should get first if you're going to, and then Bradbury Stories, it's like 100 more. The Stories of Ray Bradbury, I think, is 100. Maybe it's 100 and some bonus ones, but I think it might just be 100. And then 100 short stories in Bradbury Stories, which has a red cover. I think those are some of his later stories, but there are some good ones in there too. Or if you're going to read like Bukowski's stories, like From Tales of Ordinary Madness, or read some Faulkner or some Hemingway stories, of course, or even F. Scott Fitzgerald stories. You've got short stories by David Foster Wallace. You know, you've got a lot of writers that also put out short stories, at least sometimes. And I think, personally, if I start reading more short stories, then that'll be sort of a way to sort of ease myself, as many connotations could be in that phrasing. But, by the way, one thing I will say, language-wise, is that I think it might not be an accident, or it might not be unmeaningful that so many of our phrases now have sort of a secondary or even secondary and tertiary sexual connotation. You know, basically everything you say, like if you use the word come, like come over, it's like come over, or if you say like, oh, grab a pencil or something, it's like grab a pencil. I wonder how much Beavis and Butthead had to do with that, actually. I mean, who knows? But aside from Matt McKinley using the Beavis and Butthead, one of his funnier affectations or things that he does these days, and then he says something that people would say like against him or something, or just something that he would present as people saying it like in a silly way or in sort of a nonsensical way or something. But I wonder how much Beavis and Butthead, I almost said Stephen King, let's go back to the Freudian stuff, but I wonder how much Beavis and Butthead had to do with sort of just the classifying and responding to everything as a dirty limerick. But yeah, you know, I think I might start doing that, and maybe it'd be just a good thing for anyone who's looking to get more into reading, or more back into reading. Maybe like read 3 short stories a week or something, or even, yeah, I think 3 is a good number, but yeah, like maybe read 3 short stories a week. And if you can do that, especially if you can do them in one sitting, I think Edgar Allan Poe had a review of like Nathaniel Hawthorne's, one of his collections, I think the one with young Goodman Brown in it, and maybe in that review or maybe somewhere else, I think Edgar Allan Poe said like if you don't read a short story in one sitting, like it's best to, and if you, like that's, I think he said that's why he considered a short story a superior form to than the novel, or a superior form to the novel, I guess, because you can read it in one sitting, and if your attention is broken, it's like watching part of a movie and then going back and watching another part like another day, as opposed to reading a whole work in one sitting. Maybe that's why Edgar Allan Poe generally wrote short stories. He'd be another good one to write, or to read good short stories from, or get like a Best American Short Stories collection that might have some newer stuff, might be kind of questionable, or get like the Greatest American Short Stories, or like a collection of great stories. Read Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And, you know, I think that if you read enough short stories, or if you start reading short stories regularly, as I did, more so than I do now anyway, as I think started to do like when I was younger, then as happened with me, I think the more short stories you read, or just, if you read short stories in general, you'll get more and more into reading more, and then you'll end up reading more, long form stuff, and just especially again, or as I was starting to say, especially if you can read a short story in one sitting, it'll be like, well, that's a damn good practice for then just reading more in one sitting, and then maybe you'll read a book that's separated into chapters, and you read a whole chapter in one sitting, and maybe you'll tell yourself, generally the guideline will be to read a whole chapter in one sitting. Chapter in one.